Star Trek Insurrection is an interesting one for me. I didn't see it right away, not until it was out on cable. I had gone to see Generations and First Contact, but when Insurrection came out, all of a sudden nobody wanted to go. Probably had something to do with the fact that it had some of the worst marketing I'd ever seen. It's kind of like License to Kill from the Bond franchise. The trailer was awful. You couldn't even tell what the hell was going on, and they really didn't show any of the action scenes, so it didn't look exciting. One of my relatives did go to see it, and he told me it was completely not what he expected from the trailer and actually was pretty good. But by the time I had a chance to see it, it was gone from theaters, so I had to wait. When I finally did get to see Insurrection, I had to agree. If you've seen the trailer, you might think that it looks like it isn't even a Star Trek movie, but just an episode of The Next Generation. And that seems to be the general complaint that is levied against the film by most critics. However, considering how good the show was, how is that a bad thing anyway? Hell, the episode The Best of Both Worlds was good enough to be a movie, and producers who worked on Generations at the same time as the series finale All Good Things say that they consider All Good Things to be the superior effort. So really, saying it's just like a two-part episode of the show is not a valid criticism. You're basically just saying it's awesome. Another thing that bugs me ever-loving fuck out of me is that when this movie was being announced, people were all going around like, "Oh, what does insurrection even mean?" God damn, read a fucking book, you illiterate fucks. Basically, an insurrection means a betrayal of your superiors in the form of a rebellion. And that's what the story is about. It's basically a story about Picard finding out about some shady shit that the Federation is dealing with, and choosing his own sense of right and wrong over his loyalties to the Federation. The film is directed once again by Jonathan Frakes, who plays Riker, and had also directed First Contact. Guess Paramount knew that they had a good thing going, but only so far, as this was the last one he directed. In the beginning, you're treated to a view of what seems to be a primitive culture on a planet, being observed by the Federation from an invisible mountain area, and guys are walking around in isolation suits which make them invisible. It's reminiscent of the episode Who Watches the Watchers. Anyway, one of the Starfleet officers is Commander Data, and he starts going berserk. He fires on other officers and takes out the base's shields, exposing them to the native people, the Baku. Data also tears off his own isolation suit and takes everybody hostage. Up in space, Admiral Dougherty, who's in charge, sends a message to the Enterprise asking for Data's schematics. He doesn't want them to come to the planet, saying their shields are ill-equipped for the strange space around the area, which they call the Briar Patch. After dealing with a bunch of diplomatic stuff, Picard decides to show up anyway because he feels that Data is his responsibility. So if he's truly lost control and has to be destroyed, it should be him to be the one to do it. Worf is also on the Enterprise, visiting from Deep Space Nine, and Picard asks if he'll tag along. Picard and Worf manage to incapacitate Data and finds out what happens. He was damaged by a phaser strike, and his ethical subroutines took over, meaning that not only did he know right for wrong when he went nuts, it was the only thing he knew at the time. We also see that the Federation is not only observing the Baku, but they're working with another race, the Soma, who they're courting for an alliance. The Soma immediately come off as sinister, and Riker's background check shows them to be petty thugs. But Dougherty reasons that they need all the allies they can get after attacks from the Borg and the Dominion. That was a nice touch, though, referencing the events that took place on the show Deep Space Nine. Anyway, despite orders to STFU and GTFO, Picard continues his investigation, tracing Data's steps. He finds that Data had discovered a cloaked ship in a lake, and upon boarding it they find it's nothing more than a giant glorified holodeck, running a program that approximates the Baku village. We also find out that the Baku are not native to the planet. They're an advanced race that was once explored the galaxy, and this group of them decided to settle down on the planet. The unique radiation from the Briar Patch is refined through the planet's rings, which causes a rejuvenative effect, making them actually get younger and live for a very long time. They've rejected technology and decide to live a very simple life. The Soma have developed a process to use the energy from the rings for their own benefit, and they're working with the Federation, who see it as being a source of medical breakthroughs. They plan on beaming everybody from the village onto the ship and then relocating them elsewhere, as the Soma process will destroy the planet, making it uninhabitable. Picard is outraged, seeing this as a flagrant violation of the Prime Directive and a clear attempt at exploitation of the Baku in favor of the sinister Soma. The head Soma, Ruafo, is the main bad guy of the movie, played by F. Murray Abraham. He's getting a little fed up with the Federation and Dougherty, and appears to be aging rapidly, and his people's technology has been keeping him alive, but he's running out of time. He needs this ring energy. After a fierce argument, Dougherty orders Picard out of the Briar Patch. The scene directly afterwards, where Picard quietly removes his rank insignias and lays them on a table, is pretty powerful. Without using a word, you absolutely know his intentions. The entire Enterprise crew, except for Data, is also being affected by the planet's rings, and they're all feeling youthful and rebellious, so they join him. There are other effects shown too. Geordi regains the use of his eyes, Riker and Troi rekindle their old romance, and Worf even gets a pimple. The crew all decide to move the Baku into some caves where the minerals there will prevent them from being beamed out, while Riker and the ship go heading off to Starfleet to tell them what the fuck's up. Rafu is fed the fuck up and sends two of his ships after the Enterprise and drones after the away team, and the Baku. Riker kicks the Soma's fucking ass with his massive pimp hand, and on the planet, Dr. Crusher finds out by scanning a stunned Soma that they're literally the same species as the Baku. Turns out they're a splinter group that branched off wanting to use technology, and now their rapid aging is making them come back to their planet for revenge. The Soma are essentially children who are rebelling against the parents. When Dougherty finds out, he calls the whole thing off, but Rafu just whines like a baby and then kills him. He intends to go ahead and fuck up the planet, even if there are people on it. There's some great action scenes here, and it all winds up with Rafu getting blown up in his injector. The second in command of the Soma betrays him in the end and is reunited with his mother on the planet, while Picard has saved the Federation from becoming something sinister, and plans to use a whole shitload of shore leave to stay on the planet and get him some sweet, sweet Baku poon. Giggity. Insurrection can best be described as underrated. I guess that pairs it with Generations. I like them both about the same, though for completely different reasons. Generations was sort of a space opera, an epic story that spanned centuries and bridged two generations together. Insurrection is quieter and more subtle. It's a take on intrigue and conspiracy, and yes, it is very similar to the show. Although Picard believes in the Prime Directive, he has on more than one occasion violated it, because he thought it was the right thing to do. In this case, he decides to betray the Federation to uphold the Prime Directive, a nice twist on the whole thing. This being the third film based on a long-running show, there is, of course, a great sense of familiarity, and a lot of it is throwbacks to earlier seasons. Even Riker shaves off his beard for the first time since the first season of the show. I love when he sees Data and he says his face is smoother than an android's bottom, and Data touches his face and just gives him a look like, yeah, no it isn't. I love the fact that there are funny moments like this, but it never becomes a comedy. It retains its seriousness. Sometimes Star Trek movies have gone into full-blown comedy mode, like The Voyage Home, or tried unsuccessfully to juggle very serious subject matter with outright jokes, like in The Final Frontier. But it seems it's best when the crew is dealing with serious matters, but there are lighter moments because they've worked together for so long they're like a family. You saw it a little bit in The Undiscovered Country and First Contact, and to a lesser extent Generations, and you definitely see it here. The acting is top-notch. And while Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner stole the show in the last one, this film gives the rest of the cast more opportunities to shine. I was especially impressed with LeVar Burton, like the scene where he sees a sunrise for the first time in his life, and Michael Dorn, who got many chances to really shine as Worf on the show, but not so many into the films until now. I especially have to praise Jonathan Frakes, not for his performance so much as for his directing, which really ties the entire thing together. What I like about the film is that they didn't try to out-Borg the Borg by having a bigger, badder threat, but they did a different type of movie. It got fairly mixed reviews, maybe because it's an odd-numbered one, maybe because it wasn't like First Contact, but seriously, fuck those people. This movie's great. It has a little bit of everything, but never feels scattered or stretched thin. I give Star Trek Insurrection a 9 out of a possible 10.